Hey guys, welcome back. It's your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with something a little bit different. This is not going to be bolt action. We're actually going to cover that a little bit later on. This is going to be a little bit of a comparison video, and I know you guys have seen me hate on GW Games Workshop a fair amount here recently, so yeah, we're going to do that just a little bit more actually. I've actually had people talking to me about bolt action, saying it's a really good game, worth checking out. I've liked Warlord Games stuff plenty of times before. All the stuff they put out I've had fun with, wanted to try some of their other games. And I saw this come out, Island Assault, and it's this big starter set that has like everything you need to start playing the game. And of course it's got Marines in it, so that definitely caught my attention, piqued my interest. So let's take a look here real quick of everything you get. And then I want to do a little comparison on that with some GW stuff. So if we flip it over, it shows us here on the back what all we're getting. All right, and it's Marines versus the Japanese. And there's actually a fair amount in this box set. I gotta give it to them on it. Now, there's no terrain per se. You do have to provide your own terrain, playmat and scatter pieces, all that good stuff. But that's the same in 40K, so it's no real hit or miss. It's same for both. But what you're getting is a couple of squads for each faction. All right, each faction, not just one squad. So you got like a couple of 10-man squads. Then you've got, depending on how you build them, because they can be built in some different ways, a weapon team or two for each group. So like machine guns or bazooka teams, they have that available for both of them. So that's kind of like your special units, your heavier weapons. Both sides get that, all right? And there actually is just a tiny little bit of scatter terrain because there's some Japanese pillboxes in this. But I didn't really have a good direct comparison, so I kind of ignored those for my my comparison here. All right, so you got that going on. Real good stuff. Happy with that. There is a commander in each side, I think like a sergeant or a lieutenant for both factions. So you do have a leader element, and then you've got a vehicle for each side. We've got a half track here for the Marines, which I was kind of like, oh no, I wouldn't like a tank, because the Japanese do get a small light tank for their faction. So I actually grabbed a little armored car that I'll show you guys here in just a sec. Actually, we'll leave that there. I've started painting this little fella up to have him ready, because I think I'm gonna use the armored car instead of the half track. I just like the armored car better. It's got a little 37 mil anti-tank gun. Now, to be fair, this is a smaller scale than GW. Okay, so this is 28 mil and GW is a 32 mil scale. So just to show you a difference, I've got a little Necron sitting here. So this is GW scale, and this is bolt action scale. Bolt action is just a little bit smaller, pieces a little bit little tiny, touch more brittle. I would give it to them. So we do need to take into account also that if I had to pick who has the better models, I would pick GW. I think their models are just a little bit better component wise, but not a huge difference. Little bit better, not huge, but I would go in their favor. But it also is a little bit bigger, which does make it easier for assembly. So on top of the units that you get the templates, which are shown down over here. A bunch of plastic templates come with the game. The dice, and it's 2 sets of dice. So there's orders dice and then regular D6 dice. And then you've got the, I forget what the hell those things are called. The shaken tokens or something like that. See if it's referred to on here, like pin markers. I think those are the pin markers, the red ones over there. Oh, and what's interesting is these pillboxes are actually resin, not plastic. So that's even an upgrade on top of it. On top of those components, you also get the rulebook for the game, the player aids that you need to play the game, all the good stuff. So it's got it listed down here. The second edition rulebook, 24 people for Marines, 24 units for the Japanese. So think roughly a couple of 10-man squads and then a couple of heavy weapons teams type things, right? Each guy, each side. Vehicle for each side, 1 resin Japanese pillbox, 2 resin Japanese spider holes, the Island Assault booklet. So they have like campaign booklets for this game that give you campaign scenarios that you can play out. There's, European, a whole bunch of different stuff. Quick reference sheet, assembly leaflets, which is, how to put the crap together, plastic templates, plastic pin markers, 2 rulers, 10 6-sided die, and 12 bolt action order dice. Literally everything you need to play the game. If you wanted to, you could just play it on a bare tabletop with boxes or, small little cardboard tokens to represent terrain. You don't have to have professional terrain to put out on the table. Now, I've got terrain I've used for other games that I can use with this, and it'll look perfectly fine. But if you're interested in getting into this, it literally has everything you need in the box besides terrain, right? So, and the same thing, GW doesn't really have any game sets that, at least that I could find, could potentially be wrong, that have terrain in them. Now, I'm not talking about like special sets like Kill Team or Blood Bowl, anything like that. We're talking about like 40K as our reference. Keep all this in mind, and I decided to tally up how much it would cost me to get the equivalent in GW crap, okay? And there wasn't a real easy way to do this when I was making my list, because all the armies are different. Some have a bunch of units in a single box, some don't. So I tried to do it as fair as I possibly could. I will say that there are some command boxes that are listed down as like starter sets, but it is such a basic starter set that I don't really think it counts. It doesn't really come with everything you need, or even anywhere near an equivalency to this. Now, something like the Indomitus and whatever it's called, box set that had Space Marines and Necrons in it would have been a close comparison. All right. It had a decent amount of units on both sides and rule booklet, and that was pretty much it. It didn't come with dice or templates or anything else, but it did have units and rulebook. So that was an okay starter set. 200 for the Indominus set. So already we're talking double for this, and you would still need other components like dice, tokens, templates, codex for each team, because that does not come with it. So that would be another 100 on top. So if you had Indomitus, you're looking at Indomitus plus at least the codex for each side, which is going to cost you about 300 total. And now Indomitus is sold out, so scalper prices. So didn't take that as an example because it is sold out. We're not going to use it. We're going to go a different way. And like I said, not going with a command edition because I don't think it is as comparable to this. So I went with Space Marines and Orcs. All right, I got my little handwritten list here, and I'll throw some pictures on screen so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, we would need the rulebook. All right, rulebook for 9th edition, $65. We need the codex for each side. That's going to be $50 for each, which is going to be another $100. Okay. Then for the Marines, I decided to go with Marines because they're the main guys. They're in everything. Okay, the Marines has to be one of the factions that I picked. I didn't go with Chaos as the opposite because they're virtually the same thing. It's good Marines, bad Marines. I wanted something else. Orcs are generally the go-to bad guys in most of the stuff that GW has put out, so I went with Orcs as their opposing force. Now, to be fair to the Marines, they did have a combat patrol, I'll throw it on the screen for you, that was very close to one of these sides. All right, so not both, one. And a combat patrol was $140. And you guys can see it comes with a fair amount of stuff. Does have a vehicle, has a decent amount of units in it. But if I really wanted to bump that up to be equal to one of these sides with the amount of actual troops that you get, you would have to add at least another box of like the Intercessor Marines to it, another 10 Marines, so that would be another 60. So one way or the other, depending on how I count that, that's either 140 for Marines or 200 for Marines if you add the box to actually equal the amount here. Now, the Orcs are better priced than the Marines, but you need a lot more of the orcs to actually make it comparable, right? Because the orcs, like Gretchen, for example, I mean, you need 100 of those to equal a Space Marine. So I figured I could be fair with the orcs. Those were some of the lower cost ones. It wouldn't hit as hard if I tried to equal out the exact number of troops if I went with the orcs, right? So I was like, okay, go with the orcs. And I picked the orc boss and the mob because I figured that could kind of cover having a lieutenant or a sergeant and a couple weapon teams, right? Figure that kind of equals those guys out. And then a couple of boxes of orc boys will figure out for the troops. We'll fill out for those, right? So orc boss is $50 for him and his mob. And then it's $72 for 2 boxes of the orc boys because they're 36 each. So 72, 1 box is not enough to cover for these. But we had to have a vehicle as well because each of these sides does get a vehicle. I could have, cheated it and went with like a big vehicle or something like that. But I was like, no, I'll keep the vehicle small. What's the cheapest? Well, not the cheapest, but I think it actually was the cheapest that they had on their site. And I got this one because I actually have this one and I like this one. It's a cool name for it. It's the Boomdaka Snaz Wagon. Love that thing. Paints really well. Really cool model. So that one's only $50, which isn't horrible when it comes to GW. But again, you're looking at just a single model, Bolt action, you can get, I think, like 3 vehicles in a box, like 3 tanks for roughly that price or in that range. I mean, they're just so much better costed. Now, again, they are smaller. So if we put this up against, actually, let me grab the Boomdaka Snaz Wagon and we'll compare it to the armor car here. All right, so here you can see easily that the Boomdaka Snaz Wagon looks really cool. Actually, I like that paint job I did on that. It wasn't my best, but it came out pretty good. You guys would have seen this in the Speedster Freaks video I did. If you guys watched that, good game, worth checking out. But this is theirs, all right? So this is the vehicle I chose for them. Boomdaka Snaz Wagon. This would be their armor car. So yes, we have to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be a higher cost than this just because this is smaller, all right? Being fair on that. Now, here's the thing though. When we add all that up and total it out, it either comes to $477 or $537, depending on whether or not you add the extra 10 Marines into it to really get a fair number of units on the board. But if you were to do that, you would need to like double the amount of orcs that you ordered because the orcs point-wise in the game cost so much less than the Marines. And especially now that the Marines have like 2 wounds instead of 1. So you would need like 4 or 5 boxes of those guys. So it depends on whether you're not talking about equal numbers of units or equal numbers of points when it comes to the game. And actually, I think that's almost a point in Bolt Action's favor because you could look at this and tell relatively easily and quickly that they're going to be roughly the same point cost, right? Their units are easier to determine the list, right? Tanks are going to cost a little bit more, but this has the half-track here can have up to like 4 heavy machine guns on it. That's awesome. And then you got a bazooka to target the tank. So, I mean, this is a relatively equal fighting force. Real easy to determine. It's a lot harder to determine with 40K, but it is sci-fi, so harder to just look and know whether or not they're equal. That's also not including any dice, any tokens, any templates, anything else like that that you would need. So you're talking roughly $500 to get this, all right? To get the equivalent of what you're getting here in the Bolt Action set. Now, yes, like I said at the start, I can be fair and admit that it does depend on what faction you're going with. If you do get a starter set, something like Indomitus would be a lot better of a comparison to this as far as what's included in the box. But even with Indomitus, because of the codexes, you still have to get the the codexes for the units, so you can actually have the point cost and the weapons and the special skills for the factions. So that still bumps that up to easily 3 times what you're looking at when you're talking about bolt action. So when you take all of that into consideration, I don't mind making a small little concession that the models might not be quite as good. I mean, and it's a very small niggle. And the only reason I say that is because these are just a little bit smaller scale. The smaller pieces are a little more fragile, right? So as long as you're taking care to not like smash things down like the machine guns up here, things like that, the smaller pieces, you're going to be fine. You might have a problem if you got young kids like I do, right? They might do better with GW stuff that's a little more, I will say it's a little more durable. It is a little bit heavier than the bolt action stuff. But I could get, for the amount, right, that we're talking about just to get equal to this box worth of GW stuff, I could have 2 fully fleshed out armies, right? With all the accoutrement, and it afford to get in some terrain packs that they have as well to make my game look even that much better. So that's why I'm saying with that type of comparison going on, and it's not just Warlord Games, there are other game companies that put out tactical skirmish games. I just happen to be a historical buff. I love, my Hex Encounter games. So something like bolt action is really going to reach out to me. This is going to capture my attention, and I'm going to ask myself, why in the hell am I going to keep investing in GW stuff that costs me through the freaking nose when I could put far less money into this and have a lot more fun with it than that? Not to mention, they could put out, and they do put out a lot of this, a new codex, a new rulebook tomorrow. And now I've got to spend at least $120, $150 just on paper materials just so I can keep using the stuff that I've already got. Now, yeah, this is the second edition for bolt action, but I don't see them taking and putting out a new edition each year. And even if they did, it's not going to be anywhere near the cost of buying that rulebook as it is GW's rulebook. So yeah, you combine this with everything else that GW is doing, because there's plenty of videos out there covering it. Already did one talking about how they were attacking animators. They've gone after modders as well, people who mod the video games online, like Total War and any other GW game out there. They're gunning for anyone who is not directly under their umbrella from being able to touch anything that's Games Workshop. And it almost seems like they're pulling back from, now this is just a rumor I heard, they're pulling back from the miniatures base, which is what they do, and going for a more digital base where they're going to put out like videos and lore and focus on that. Okay, yeah, you've created a cool universe and all, but it doesn't stand on its own. The gamers are what, built your company up. I just don't see what they're doing. They almost seem to be doing everything they can to bring themselves down. And okay, cool. You guys make your choices. I'm sorry they made it back when I wish they had done this a year ago, so I hadn't started investing a little bit into Games Workshop stuff again. I think you're fine if you want to get a box set, like an individual box game, like Blood Bowl, Curse City, if they ever bother to reprint the damn thing, Blackstone Fortress, games like that, like more of a standalone experience that even if you miss an expansion, you still have a core game to go with. I think you're fine if you want to get into that stuff. But things like Age of Sigmar, 40K, their Lord of the Rings line, probably a time to get out of that and maybe look towards companies like Warlord Games that actually care about their customers and produce good games like Bolt Action that people want to play. And they put out affordable kits that give you actually everything that you need to play in the box, dice and templates and all the accoutrement that you need to play a damn game, rather than trying to nickel and dime and gouge the player base for every single penny they can take out of them. That gets old after a while, especially while you watch them sue into oblivion all the third-party people you used to love reading about online or watching videos of on YouTube. Or now, since they're going after modders, the ones who are attacking the video games that you play, the modders out there, and the modders weren't even like selling it. As far as I know, they just had like donations. You could donate to them if you appreciated the work that they did, which, trust me, as a YouTuber who doesn't get paid jack squat for the shit that I put out, and it's really just donations. I do it one time a year, asking for donations to help keep the channel going. I can understand the modders' feelings. So if I got sued for trying to help the wargaming community, I would be highly, highly pissed over it. Anyway, that's enough ranting for me. You guys let me know what you think. If you're into bolt action, let me know what you think too. I have not played the game yet. This is really my first dipping my toe into it. I do like what I've seen so far. I think the units are going to be awesome on the board. I think they're relatively easy to paint because so much of it is just like a base green, olive drab green, you know, whatever. And you paint just a few little things on it and it looks good on the table already. I mean, this one, there's a lot more that I'm going to do. It's some panel lines and paint some of the little extra details on it and get some rust and dirt, you know, all that good crap painted on there. But even if I just did it with the base green with the black tires and the, you know, blacken the weapons, looks good on the table. I'd be fine putting that on there and having fun with the game. You know, you can't do that as much with this stuff. But yeah, you guys definitely put your thoughts below. Let me know what you think about my little comparison here cost-wise, whether or not you think I was fair to them. I tried to be fair. I will admit I am a little biased, but I tried to be fair. All right, you guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.